water. Go for it.
Yeah. All right. So, I think we're recording. We're recording.
Okay. Thank you, Veronica Post, for setting up the whole Zoom meeting.
Thank you, Howard Chackowicz, for coming. This is going to be nice. I like the idea of doing a co-interview. So I haven't done a lot of interviews in my life, but I feel a little bit like I like having a conversation. I don't just like talking and like dominating the conversation. So this will be nice because we'll both have a chance to kind of like bounce off each other a little bit.
That sounds good. And
yeah.
please feel free to chime in if I'm rambling on or anything like that.
I'm going to be happy if you're rambling on.
I've been in my fears that because a lot of the themes in your book or a lot of things you talk about in your book, relate strongly, like I feel strongly for, and I'm afraid I might go off on, I won't, I'm sure I won't, but I'm afraid of going off on like a political tangent or rant or something like that, whatever. So I'm sure it's going to happen naturally because your book certainly has political overtones to it and stuff, or like social issues and stuff. So, but there's things I'm passionate about, so I just got to be careful, because one thing that I'm remember we were talking, we had an exchange, we were like an email exchange. I was saying, I hope my book doesn't offend you in any way. And you were saying, all I care about is people I don't like people trying to insult other people, like hurt other people, right? Yeah. And I'm saying, I'm just careful because different reasons. But I'm always afraid when talking politics. I hate the idea of I really believe in building bridges.
Yeah.
And I'm always afraid that when I speak too strongly, that someone's going to close that door rather than leave the door open. So I got to just. But your book really inspires.
Oh my gosh, I identify with that so much, which was one of the reasons why I was nervous about releasing the book. Because I was like, well, I don't know. I'm afraid of, turning people off or like coming across as like heavy-handed. I don't want to be heavy-handed. I just want to share my feelings, right?
Yeah.
So
it wasn't so not heavy-handed. It's so like really tactful and full of feeling and openness, and it's a gentle touch, but it's a powerful message, So
thank you.
Let's start with by the way. So what I do is I cover because I can't stop looking at my own mug, so I kind of cover my face, my little. What bookmark is this anyway?
What are you covering it with? What is that?
It's Art Life by Catherine Ocelot.
Oh, the little bookmark.
Yeah, I used to say a little bookmark.
Nice.
So I kind of fold it in half and I kind of put it over so I don't have to. I once tried with a piece of paper, but I was able to see myself, like a ghost of myself, through the thin 8.5 by 11 paper. And even that was too much. And now I got this solid.
It's distracting. Yeah.
It's not too dark down here, like people keep calling it the crypt. This is
well, I'm used to it. I actually watched a couple of your Facebook Live videos. So I'm like, oh yeah, Howard's basement. I recognize that. Okay.
It's my studio.
It's nice. Look at quiet place,
I feel very lucky. I feel lucky to have it. Yeah. So let's do a little like an intro.
Yeah.
You are Veronica Post.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead. Book. Yeah, and you're Howard Chackowicz, author of this book.
Hello to TCAF, by the way. Thank you so much for doing this.
Yes.
So great. It's so sad. We were supposed to sign together at TCAF, and it's really sad that this is. I guess this is. At least there's this. It doesn't replace TCAF, and what can it's such a great event, and it's an important event for all of us. So we're all sad to lose out for so many reasons, but at least this is so nice that they took the initiative to do this. And
absolutely. No, this is good. I'm sad that I wasn't able to go to TCAF. I've never been there, so I don't really know what I'm missing, but I was looking forward to like an intense weekend.
Yeah.
Lots of comics and lots of people and lots of social stuff.
Yeah, I've never seen anything like TCAF before. I've never been to the Brooklyn event, but you see, like you can look online and see the event happen. But TCAF is like, in a good way. It's gonna sound bad, but you ever see an ant farm?
Yeah.
And, that's what it is. Like
I had an ant farm when I was a kid. I love those things.
I've only seen comic books and cartoons. I've never actually seen a real ant farm. Wow, that's so cool. You actually had it. It's like that. It's like you walk in and there's a zillion people shoulder to shoulder, and it never stops. It just never stops moving. Like the line up the spiral staircase in the Toronto Public Library, floor after floor, and there's just no break in it. Every floor you go into is shoulder. It's the most like packed, like thriving, exciting. It's just a fantastic event. Everyone's there. So
I hope that we can
next
get
year.
back to doing stuff like that again. I'm
Yes,
not
next
I'm
year.
not a huge extrovert, but it's nice to experience things like that from time to
Yeah,
time. So
it's very overwhelming. You get very tired. There's a lot of people. The people watching is incredible. Like, Toronto's full of so many different types of people from every different background, culture, scene, whatever. So it's wild, and so many, and it kind of really exposes the whole world of comics and like all the different types of comics just in this one city. People come from all over, and you get to meet your heroes. You get to meet people with your peers. You get to meet new people. It's just a really great event. So very sad. I was looking so forward to it, but also for both of us, and I guess we'll get into it later. Also, one of my questions is like kind of how does like COVID affect things for your book, and this
yeah.
would have been a great event.
Yeah. I would like to talk about that with you too,
Yeah.
because it's interesting times. But can I just ask you? I'm going to put this on you. Can you start by talking about your book, but also just in general sense? For people who maybe have never read any of your other comics before and they don't know what they're getting into. What is it? What is your style like? Like, what are your inspirations? Like, what do you draw from? And just tell us a bit of like what to expect when you open that book.
Okay, cool. I was gonna ask you a similar question.
Yeah.
So I'll grab my book too. That'll help. So I feel different things. So for me, like a huge influence was this cartoonist named Bernard Hap Kleben. I have some of his books here. A lot of people say Klibben, and I used to always say Klibben, but it's actually Kleben. So this is like the precursor to almost all the, like the Gary Larson, Far Side type
Oh
comics.
yeah, totally. Your work reminds me of Gary Larson, but I've never
Thank
seen
you.
Kleben. So
Wow, yeah, it's so funny. When we had the book launch, I kind of consider this book to, even though I think it's 20, like this kid, like I feel like this was officially kind of out like at the beginning of January. Like the first book launch was like December 5th or something.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like I feel weird calling it a 2019 book. Like literally, the whole push would have been all in 2020,
Yeah.
And so why am I mentioning? I'm trying to remember why I'm mentioning this. But anyway, we had a book launch at the end of December at the Beguiling in Toronto, and I mentioned Kleban's name. I said, anyone here know Kleben? B. Kleben? Nobody. Only the owner, Peter, the owner of the Beguiling, knew who it was. And it was kind of heartbreaking because I consider this guy to be the king. It's not just me. Like a lot of cartoonists, like consider this guy to be like And what I really let's see if there's also like beautiful color stuff.
Ooh, nice. Yeah.
I'm trying to find one like here, like oh geez, some of them are so, I don't know. Debbie and Pam visit India. I don't know if you can see, like, anyway.
Yeah.
He's just so great. And what I always loved about Kleben is that he drew in different styles, and often he drew things that were very, kind of like just artistic and kind of like, I don't know if you can get a sense, but kind of like,
Yeah.
Oh,
totally.
Or just straightforward, funny.
Oh my gosh, that's so Larson. I can't believe I haven't heard of Kleben, because I love Larson. I love like one-page panel comics, sort of gag comics, but also, yeah, when they go off into those, a little bit more artistic.
Yeah, very artistic. And this is, so yeah, Gary Larson considers this guy his inspiration also. Like we just all, anyway, he's just so great. And it kind of kills me. And then I realized what I've learned over this past couple of years is that he never really did, he was really phobic of, maybe not phobic's not the right word, but he really didn't like media and interviews and all that kind of stuff. He just wanted to do art, Yeah. And at the time, he was so popular, he was so huge. This was something that everyone knew. He had a cat character that was always on mugs and towels. And this, like when I was growing up in the 70s, this is what you saw everywhere, was this cat character. But it's been forgotten, I guess. It's, it is like 30 years ago, 40, whatever it is, And so he's always really touched my heart. So my book definitely, or my gag cartoons are definitely inspired by him. And also Raw magazine, like Art Spiegelman, Françoise Mouly, they did Raw. There was always like in Raw, there are always these few pages of gag cartoons. Mm-hmm. And there'd be Mark Newgarden, the great Mark Newgarden. We all know who did stuff like, like that's his gag cartoon with like tons and tons of text. Like he's the one that did, great. I mean, he's just a fantastic. He's the one that did when Paul Karasik did the How to Read Nancy book, that big book from a couple of years ago, How to Read Nancy. And so so he's a huge inspiration, and all those, Mark Marek, all the people that did the stuff in the raw. So that's it. So and then the third thing I'll say, and I'll try to sum it up here, I'm rambling. The third thing is I always felt that in Montreal, there was very much like this comics and cartoons and cartooning with art. So everybody was doing murals and sculpture, comic murals, comic sculptures. We were all part of a lot of shows once upon a time, at different kind of galleries and stuff, kind of like this the art thing, Mm-hmm. And so I think for my book, and the last one too, the idea was like I want to be funny. I hope that it's funny, and I want to have some that are more hard hitting or upsetting or whatever. But in the spirit of these guys, the raw people, Kleban, Gary Larson too, all that stuff, and also keeping it artistic and putting in illustrations too, stuff that just kind of like it feels like a bit of a blurred line, between what's a cartoon, what's illustration, gags, So that's what
it's kind of a little bit of all of those things. Like when you were talking about Montreal, like the scene in Montreal and stuff, is that when you met Andy Brown? Were you guys all part of that scene together?
It's different. I know the first book Andy published of mine was must be 91. God, I would know. Early 91 maybe, or something like that. I don't remember anymore. And it felt that at that time, it really, really felt like a unified scene, French, English, all together. There were definitely people who had different ideas or saw themselves differently, but it was a community. It really was a community, comic jams and all kinds of stuff. Things have changed a lot since then, but Andy was a huge part of it. He was living with Billy Mavreas at the time.
Yeah.
And their apartment was really very it's not like a grassroots comic publisher kind of thing, like books and comics everywhere and draw art everywhere, and it was just really beautiful.
Wow, that's so great.
Really great.
Yeah, Montreal has a great scene. I mean, I lived there for a bunch of years, but I was in a different sort of scene, I guess. I was kind of like in this the punk rock scene.
Cool. Are you a musician?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know if I'm a musician. Maybe by punk rock standards I am. I played drums in a band for a while.
Cool.
And I was part of a little zine distro. So we were called the Walking Distance Zine Distro, and we would compile people would just, make zines, and we would get them printed for free. We had a friend who worked at a printing shop. So they would print all these, maybe 70 copies of each zine, and then we would make envelopes and deliver them around our neighborhood. And so that's when I started really making self-published comics. And I should actually get some.
Yeah, go grab some.
Okay.
Go get your history.
I have them in my living room. This is that.
Okay. I'll entertain in the meantime.
All right, good.
TCAF, how we miss you. Oh, TCAF, let's get a tea together. Can you see a fun time? TCAF, TCAF. Let's get together and have a decaf. That's the best I can do off the cuff.
There we go.
Hey!
The song stylings.
Yeah, right. Hey, very quickly, what was the name of your band?
I was in a band called the Pantyhose.
Pantyhose.
Yeah. We were silly and fun, but we were also sort of, I don't know, it was a similar kind of, I maybe this is why I like your comic so much. I've always really been into things that are a blend of, comedic but tragic, surreal and real. I like those combinations of things. So, the band was a little bit like that. We were funny, and we played around a lot with kind of making fun of the subculture, but we also talked about, serious stuff too. It's more touching, I think, if you're going to try to talk about serious things. If you can add a little bit of humor into there every once in a while, I think it.
Yeah, what a tool! What an incredible tool! It's so. The worst is when you're doing something trying to do that, and then someone misunderstands it, and then right, and it's you say something horrible. No, my God, that's not what I meant at all. No.
Yeah.
And let's use your zines as an intro, and then we'll go into your to what?
Yeah. How about we do that?
Yeah, and you can say what the story behind your book.
Yes. Okay, let's do that. So I have some examples here. This is probably like, oh, I think I have one. Yeah, here's an example. So this is like, it hasn't even been cut apart yet. This is like a little bookmarky thing I made called High Five. And it's a couple characters there, like high five.
It looks like Rick Trembles.
Yeah, this is based on my roommate at the time, Dave. And I was like always really excited, optimistic person, and he was just always like, well, we were like kind of opposites, but we got along. We were like,
That's awesome.
That's the first little comic that I made for the zine distro, and then I did like snow fort.
Wow.
Like people making a snow fort in the yard. Is that upside down?
Oh yeah, you're right. Oh yeah, it was.
Making a snow fort in the yard, and then like, you know, it's all melted and the boots are melting. Stuff like that.
Oh, so nice.
And then I got into, this is one about my cat. So my cat died.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And it was in 2007, so I'm over it now. But it was she was poisoned by the garage. I lived across the street from a garage in Southwest Montreal, and they poisoned her. They set out poison for the cats.
Oh my God.
I know, it was awful. But this is a little story of the cat looking into a foggy window. And then I go over and I'm like, here, I'll like clear a little path for you there to see. And then she's like, nah. I just feel like looking at the fog.
So funny. Oh, what a tragic story, though. I'm so sorry.
I know, it was.
Oh my God, that was sort of horrific.
They were terrible. They were.
Why did they admit to it? Did they?
Well, I mean, maybe like, you know, if you don't live in Montreal, you don't know. There are so many stray cats in Montreal.
That's yeah.
And like in the Southwest, it was just. I mean, maybe now that I'm older and more bitter, I can kind of understand, but it was awful. But they were just trying to deal with a stray cat problem, and that was their way of doing it. Here's another little zine. This is like, I got into a thing where I was really into looking at like women bodybuilders, and I thought they were.
Is that? I think I reckon I used to be really into bodybuilding. Is she more of a?
Yes, that's right. So that I don't think I have her name there. But then I was like looking at them and I would be like quotes from women bodybuilders who I thought were cool. So I did a little thing about them, you know, like I thought they were fun to draw. Well, you know, that's just kind of a...
Carla Dunlap, that's what that looked like, Carla Dunlap.
Carla Dunlap, yeah. Carla Dunlap, yeah. Oh my gosh, Howie.
Oh my God, well, that's really pulling it out of the ether. I mean, we're talking, that was a long time ago. I used to, you ever hear of Lisa Lyon? Lisa Lyon?
No, I don't know.
She was the original female bodybuilder, but she was like an art subject too. So Mapplethorpe did a whole, Mapplethorpe, I think.
Mapplethorpe.
He did a whole thing on her called Lion, and she was an amazing, she's still alive, but she was actually like the origin of women's bodybuilding and home fitness and all this kind of stuff.
Oh, wow.
It's crazy a bit. You know who she was? You know who she was actually? She was the adopted daughter, she was the adopted adult daughter of John Lilly, the Day of the Dolphin scientist. You ever see David? You ever hear this guy? He used to communicate with dolphins,
what?
LSD and everything. It's a crazy story. I don't understand.
Like adopted an adult bodybuilder?
Yeah, he adopted her.
When she was an adult.
When she was an adult, yeah. It's a strange story. LSD, kind of all the 60s, 70s, 60s. I don't know why no one's done a documentary on it yet. It's like one of the most fascinating, you know. But wow, I'm happy I recognize Carla Dunlap.
Yeah, that's cool. No, there's a whole world of bizarre stories out there that can be made into comic books or something. But yeah, so I guess, you know, as a segue into my book,
yeah. So
I was doing all of that stuff, and then I traveled to Europe, and it's all was a crazy story. But while I was over there, like I made a lot of connections, and I met a lot of people, like people who were actually like fugitives from justice and like living in squats and all of that stuff. I mean, it's kind of a scene over there, I guess.
Was that in Hungary specifically, or?
Not in Hungary at all.
Okay.
The squatting is more of a scene in like Berlin and Barcelona and stuff. But then like a couple of people who are a little bit like even more antisocial than the squatters in Berlin had moved into Budapest. And so I was just kind of fascinated by it, and then traveled around and with some of those people, and had some of the experiences that I talk about in the book. And yeah, I guess when I was over there, I was, I'm not such a good person at just having like an aimless travel experience. And so I started a diary, and then the diary was in comic book form. And then when I came back, I was like, I should just turn some of these into like little mini zines. And then I started drawing them as like little sort of mini comic stories. And then I was introduced to Andy, and I pitched the idea to make a book out of it, and that's how that whole thing started.
Did you actually have like a character like Langosh, or was it you that you were drawing in these?
It was Langosh, yeah, because I can't keep a diary without feeling totally self-conscious like a teenage 13-year-old overdramatic kid. So I can't do that. Like I just like sitting down and being like, today I just not. I can't do it. Like I feel like an idiot. Or like someone's watching over my shoulder and like laughing at everything I'm writing down. And so I had to do it that way, where I was like, okay, these are different characters, and I can write about it and not feel like I'm going to be ridiculed.
So in those early travel diaries, you created a character, you created like a Langosh to tell these stories, to tell these, wow. How many of you, referring to my notes here, I mean, I know they say semi-autobiographical, but like how much of that was true? I know, like not a percentage, but like.
Yeah, all of it.
Oh my God. So what's the
story?
All of
it was true.
What's this underground bunker business?
There's so many bunkers. I don't know. I was like encountering bunkers, and there's so many I didn't even write about in that book.
Were you one of those? Were you one of those? I don't remember the name of it. That's what I was thinking as I was reading it. These urban explorer people.
Yeah.
Like, you were doing that stuff.
Yeah, I'm really into that for a while. Abandoned buildings were like a beacon.
So you'd be walking the woods, and you'd see like this kind of door, and you'd say you just go down with a flashlight. You just go down and see what was down there.
Yeah.
Wasn't it a little bit scary? Like
carry a flashlight at all times.
I knew that was based. Like you can just tell like there's an authenticity to it, you know. Like I guess for those who don't know, every time I have to refer to the book, I have to take this thing off the little. So Veronica's book, I don't want to say too much because obviously I don't want to do it. But the character Langosh is kind of my itinerant traveler, fugitive from law. I want to ask you about that too, and from the law in Canada, and traveling around Hungary and different parts, Sarajevo, different parts of Europe in the region, and but he's constantly coming across abandoned buildings, sometimes where to stay, just to sleep, to find a shelter, but just also in the spirit of adventure. Going down into caves, into underground shelters, into God knows what, just going into the great unknown, going down stairwells, going down the ladders into sewers, and so you would do that stuff. I mean, were you not afraid of I don't know what can possibly be down there? What would I be afraid of? I don't know. Geez, there's even one little scene, something as simple as a gaping hole in the ground that you may not have seen, and you could have plummeted to your death, like that kind of thing. You know?
That was scary. That was scary in retrospect, because I was like, if I had fallen down there, no one would have found me.
Oh my God, and it would have found you. Oh my God. Were you by yourself though?
No, I wasn't. I was with a friend. Yeah, that was retrospectively scary, and scary at the time because there was a bunch of animal bones down there. So animals had fallen down there, and I'm like, if an animal falls down there, and they're way more, I consider animals to be way more, smarter than humans about, going into tunnels and stuff.
Yeah.
I was like, God, they could have smelt the hole or sensed it with their whiskers or something, and even they were, falling in there. So that was scary, but I wasn't ever scared of anything like, like encountering dangerous people or anything in those places. I mean, I never saw anybody. One time I was in a place in Sarajevo that was like, they had started building this really incredibly weird, bizarre looking building in a suburb of Sarajevo. It was like very Yugoslavian kind of deco looking, like bright, crazy colors. It was supposed to be a housing complex, I guess. And then the war just put an end to that. So the shell of that building was there, and it was really interesting to walk around because there was like fountains there that you know, it looked like, wow, this place was gonna be the best, and then it just ended, and everything ended. And when I was walking around in there was another guy like lurking in the distance, like, and you could tell he was kind of like wondering what I was doing, but he wasn't approaching me. And I was like, I wonder if this is just like a beat, you know? Like, is this a place where guys go to meet each other?
Oh, I see.
You know, like, because I was like, why else would he be there? Just like, but then why was I there? You know, I don't know. There was some weird moments, but I wasn't really scared. I really don't go around my life thinking there's like murderers around every corner.
Yeah.
And most people are good people, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, 64%, something like that.
Yeah.
I'd give another 30% like latent. It just needs to come out.
Yeah.
What about caves and stuff? Like there's one where you go just, oh, there's a cave. Let's go explore. I'm like, what the hell? Why is he going in there with his dog? Oh my God. I was scared for Peppi the whole time. Like, Peppi doesn't know any better. By the way, just parenthetically, I fucking love that Peppi is just a dog. It made it so much more powerful. I wish more cartoonists and more people who did stuff that would realize an animal, just as an animal, it carries so much more power, so much more weight, so much more empathy than when it's like sentient, like Snowy from Tantan or something like that. Like, watch out, don't go that way. It's like he's scared. It's like, and you really were great at. Have you ever been a dog owner?
Yes, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. I love dogs, and I know you do too.
I love all animals.
Say hi to Brucey for me.
I will. We can go and see you after. I really felt like this was someone who understood dogs and knew how to like draw a dog, like get the feeling of it. And oh man, and that's why I found that it added. Because I found the book very powerful. I'll get into it at some point, but it's like I found it so moving and powerful, like as a whole, but also the parts that are supposed to be. And I just found that the realistic portrayal of Peppi really accentuated the emotional aspects of the book, like where he's part of it, like, you know. But I find whenever they kind of make animals not anthropomorphized, but you know, like when they have like this kind of extra smartness that they don't really have, like, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, of course you can still feel for it, but this made it feel like I really felt it was in reality. And because you're talking about you know, I'm not saying these are your themes or whatever. I'm just kind of shooting stuff out there random, like, you know, abuse of authority, police, military, you know, poverty, being an itinerant, you know, refugees, immigrants. These are real issues that affect real people. And like by having Peppi being just, it just made everything feel real. And so that I really appreciate that so much.
Thank you. That's interesting to hear, because it was not intentional that it would make it extra impactful or anything like that. But I was like, yeah, I don't know, like for Langosh, I was like, he can't just be alone. He needs to, you know, he can't just be talking to himself, or I didn't want it to just be all in his head. But like animals are such I don't know, like when you have a relationship with a dog, especially, I find it's like there's an honesty there that is really powerful for people who understand what that relationship is like. Because you can just be your worst or your best around your dog, and they'll just love you and be with you no matter what, right? And there's like, if you're looking for someone to be a therapist, I think like a dog is a great option, because you'll just talk to the dog. Like if you sit down and just try to talk to the dog about your things, like as you're talking, you can kind of realize what is true about what you're saying and what you are maybe creating a false front about, you know? Yeah.
Well, my dog's a big phony, so I don't know really.
Yeah.
Everything's image. So it's very hard.
It's true. Well, he is a very handsome dog, you know.
Yeah, right. So old. Tell me about Yeva. Is it Eva or Yeva? Yeva. Is that based on a real person?
Yes. Yeah. Yeva is, well, yeah, because all of the characters are based on real people. Langosh is more based on me than the other ones are. But Yeva is a combination of a really good friend of mine and me at times, because my good friend who Yeva is based on is maybe even more extreme than the character is. Like she's just the definition of like bombastic. Wow. And so it would be difficult for me to actually like recreate a character who is who is that intense.
She's
But
great.
she's based on a really good friend of mine who's like just a wonderful person. Yeah.
She's so fun. And what about the again, I don't want to give too much away, but like, were you fleeing justice at all?
I personally was not.
Okay.
No.
Okay, I'm relieved about that.
Yeah.
It's yeah, I really appreciated like that. I mean, I remember I said to her a few times I almost felt like I was gonna cry, kind of thing. I'm not really a crier, really. It's like, but again, I'm afraid of saying too much, because people who are watching they're gonna want to buy your book, and I don't want to give things away. But I'll try to keep it as vague. Like Langosh's experience with Canadian police,
Yeah.
very heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And his fear, at borders and stuff, and the dire consequences that might be, all adds to I'm trying to say, again, I'm just trying to be very careful. All adds to like the final act kind of thing. Like, it's like,
Yeah.
we know that Langosh is not, it's not like things are fantastic for him. You know what I'm saying? It's not like it's like, but then you put things in perspective again, because we can talk about the two. So things like that, and then of course the experiences of the other actors in the book, the immigrants and refugees in the book and stuff. So just fantastic. But really, these are emotional moments, and because they're also relatable. You're talking. Where's my little note here about? Let's see here. Maybe it's another thing. Yeah, here, basically, there's a lot of things. Like, first of all, it's weird because like my dad was a Holocaust survivor, and on my mom's side, they went through a lot too. Her parents were from Russia and Lithuania, so for them it was more like Cossacks and the Tsar and that kind of thing. But if my dad were alive today, he'd be 108. So I'm 51. Wow. So it's he had me at 57, and my mom would be 93.
Oh my gosh, Howard, you grew up with a different generation of experience.
Oh yeah, no, I grew up. Yeah, it's really weird. My eldest sister is 72.
Yeah.
We're 4 kids. Here's actually. I won't. I'm gonna start pulling photos off the wall and stuff. We'll get the whole history lesson. But the thing is, I've been around Europe too, and I luckily did not inherit my dad was not racist in any way, but he was definitely he grew up in Poland, so. For Poles and for Germans, I think he had a hard time, but he was okay though. Through his life, he knew maybe, he still spoke Polish and stuff and everything, but there maybe was a bit of a prejudice there. But I think as the years went on, well, what can you do? It's like, I understand what he went through and everything, so it's hard not to. But I'm happy I didn't inherit it, and but at the same time, when you're growing up and, in Hungary and all across Europe, there's still so much anti-Semitism and anti-Roma sentiment and anti-immigrant sentiment and anti-Muslim sentiment, all this kind of stuff. So it's a bit jarring, and I find like people tiptoe around it a bit. And at the same time, I find that tiptoeing around it is also a mistake, because it's got to be addressed, but at the same time, it has to be addressed without it being like a representation of an entire people or entire country. Like, we all have this stuff, right? So I found that you did a really great job at kind of pointing out reality, things that you saw, things that you see in the society there, at the same time saying this doesn't define everybody, this is just something that's there. We have, like you see in the States, all the terrible Islamophobia, or you see it here too. Yeah. It does represent us, because you see it in our governments talk that way, our authority systems talk that way, police and everything, and their actions, and their words. And you see, many parts of the population, the media talk. But of course, that's not in all Canada or the States, right? It's, we have actors who, people are out there who are trying to, activists and people who are trying to make change. And so I thought that was great. So that touched me. The stuff that you wrote about, the way you portrayed kind of police and government authority, the realities of being kind of on the street and not having there's just a lot of it was very super powerful. And what was incredible was that it's juxtaposed with these beautiful drawings of nature and scenery and the environment. What's your background in so I'm trying to find, they're all beautiful, but I'm trying to just these little, I don't know if people can see. I'm so bad at getting to the camera. Oh, I see it.
I am too. I was like, where is it?
Yeah, because I'm looking at the screen, but I should be looking at the camera. So I'm probably doing a good job here. But here you can see Veronica's beautiful, just an example. Each page is filled with lush it's a very very clean drawings, but beautiful details for in every way. And Langosh is drawn in such a kind of a clean style. It's a wonderful, like, it really allows everything to come out. What's your background? Like, are you artistic? Like, are you like you're trained artist kind of thing, or what's the?
Yeah, I mean, I can't say that I'm totally self-taught because I went to NASCAD University for a year.
Okay.
So I did their foundation program, and there was drawing courses there. But I essentially I'm pretty self-taught. Like 1 year of like being a lazy art student is not gonna teach you how to do a graphic novel.
No.
Yeah, no, it's like my style has changed a lot over the years, and I think when I started out, I was a lot more detail oriented, and I still like a lot of detail, but I used to go pretty crazy with the cross hatching. I'll see if I can get an example here. Like, I did a little story. This is from a zine from like years ago, where I was illustrating a story that from my grandfather's childhood.
Wow.
So I used to do a lot more pen cross-hatching stuff.
Wow. Is this that? Is there gray wash in this, or is this like pencil and stomp?
It's
like
pen and ink, but it's like a dip pen.
Yes, that's right.
And a marker. I just use like alcohol-based markers to color in the gray stuff because I actually don't know how to use a computer, Howard.
I'm beyond, like, whatever you don't know, I know less. So you're using like this kind of thing, right? This kind of marker, like, but like the gray. Like
it's no, it's like a. Let me see if I have one.
Where the hell's my other ones? Jesus. Oh, here.
I must have. Yeah, here's one. I would like to learn how to use a computer because it took like.
Okay.
Windsor Pro marker. It took way too many of these to do that book.
Okay.
And they're like $4 each.
Right. So and then you have different gradings, like some are extremely light gray and some are a little bit darker kind of thing?
They're all the same gray, but I layer it like watercolors.
Oh, right. That's true. It gets darker each time.
Yeah.
I just found it very nice because some of the moments where you see the gray, it has almost a feeling of like a pencil and stomp, when you so I was like, wow, but that's not it, but it's not because it's so clean, so it doesn't look like that. And I thought, oh, maybe she's using gray wash. It's very hard to say, but it's very effective. It's really nice because it's very it's a very nice gray. It really works really well.
I like I'm a big fan of really clean stuff. Like I like all sorts of stuff. But myself, what I seem to aspire to is like a very clean line. And it's like, I also really like my biggest inspiration came from a book called Disappearance Diary.
Oh, yes. So this is wait, what's his name?
Hideo Azuma.
So that was the only name I didn't recognize. I love manga, but I didn't recognize this guy's name. And then I was like, he's like, oh, he's known for Lolicon. I'm like, what the fuck is Lolicon? Am I even saying that right? So then is it Lolicon? So then I go onto Google Images, and it's like, oh my god, it's like Lolita. It's all, and you see women with tattoos of prepubescent like anime women around their step.
Okay, yeah. I wasn't so worried about that.
Oh my god. But then I saw the thing you were talking about, the Disappearance Diaries, and then I saw some pages from that, and I like to get my hands on that.
It's so good. It's my favorite graphic novel, actually. Oh, wow. I've read it over and over and over again, and every time I read it, I get something different from it. And I was kind of nervous about referencing him because of his other work, but then I was like, whatever. I love that book.
Oh, it's great. Really no, yeah, that's so great. Well, I'm gonna get my hands on it because I saw a couple of pages from it, and it's really that's my cup of tea too. Yeah. I just love this. It's weird, right? There's this. I've always loved stuff that talks about things that none of us really want to experience, like extreme loneliness, mental breakdowns, being a complete outsider, a misfit, being completely outside of society. So that's why I love prison stories and war stories. And I'm anti-prison, I'm anti-war, I'm anti-military. But it's but these are people who are living through these things, and when it's devoid of any kind of jingoism, patriotic, it's just I'm going through hell. Here's my story. this is what I experienced. It's like, oh my god, I just find it so.
Yeah.
I wish I could remember the guy's. It's one of my favorite mangas. I always forget the guy's name. He wrote. It's called Doing Time, and they made a movie about it too. A really great movie adaptation of it also. And he was. I'll look up his name. I'll make a note here and I'll look it up before we finish up because I think everyone should read it. He is a very well known manga artist, and he does like historical manga.
Mm-hmm.
But he's also like you know those people that do military reenactments.
Yeah.
They kind of dress up in uniforms and all this kind of stuff. He's one of those guys in Japan.
Ooh.
And then someone got a vintage gun, and they said, "Would you want this?" And he says, "Okay, I'll take this." But in Japan, supposedly they have incredibly strict gun laws, even though it's a vintage gun. And he went deep into the woods and he shot it, and then someone ratted on him. And then they said, "Well, you're gonna have to."
God!
Incredible thing. And he's like, "Well, you're gonna have to come within the year at some point." Like very like.
Yeah.
And so it documents his time in prison, in a Japanese prison.
Oh my gosh.
It's really like it's something. It's very different than anything I've read about American prisons. And
yeah, I've heard the same thing. I mean, as a result of like making friends with a whole bunch of weirdos, I've actually met people who've gone to Japan in order to do graffiti because Japan is just it's so different there, you know, from the rest of the world, basically. But they're like, yeah, you have to be really careful not to get caught because, you know, people don't really break the rules very often in Japan. And like the punishment is really, really severe. And like the prisons are notorious.
His name is Kazuichi Hanawa.
Oh, okay.
So Kazuichi, and then Hanawa, Hanawa. Doing Time, and I have one of his like mangas also. It's not really my cup of tea, like his actual like historical gladiator time, whatever the stuff he's doing, whatever. But this is one of the greatest prison books I've ever read.
Huh.
My favorite manga, and it's beautifully drawn, and there's so much about the food in the prison. It's like a really whole thing, and the film adaptation is like great, like one of the best.
Oh, that's so cool! I'll definitely check it out. Yeah, you should get Disappearance Diary if you can. If you can get your hands on it. It's the story of and this is where so much of my influence came for the book that I did. Not that they're the same, but the way that he blends like a very tragic kind of story. It's about his like descent into like alcoholism and homelessness basically, and then back again. Like he lives a totally different life for a while, and then his family finds him and he goes back home and he goes into rehab, and then it's about his rehab experience. So it's really pretty dark stuff, but he does it with so much honesty and humor. Mm-hmm. Like that book made me laugh out loud quite a few times, and it's like I just thought it's genius, you know.
I'm 100% gonna get it because it sounds right up my alley. Also, I'm curious to see like what inspired you to and stuff. And what was the other stuff? It was that, and it said, Guy Delisle, and Joe Sacco.
Yeah.
There's a Joe Sacco book I want to read. I haven't read a very recent one. I don't know how recent it was, but dang. Anyway, I'll just sorry.
I haven't read all his books either.
He's prolific.
Yeah. And I don't understand how it's possible because his drawings are so damn good. I'm like, how do you have the time to do this? He's really impressive. And also just being a real journalist, you know, like he's not like me. He's not just some schmuck traveling around.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I don't like I like Joe Sacco's work and I love the art, you know, but there's moments in his work that are not, you know, like I wouldn't say it's such a huge difference because it's like you're writing about your experiences, what you're seeing and you're observing. It's true that maybe his stuff is more focused, like, you know, if they're talking about specific politicians and it's like, you know, like war criminals and that kind of stuff. Yeah. Milosevic, whoever he was talking about at the time. But it's kind of like, I don't know, there's like one scene where he's like, it's in, what book is it? Does anyone call it? It's like Sarajevo or something? I'm trying to remember the name.
Yeah, it might be Safe Area Gorazde.
That's it.
Yeah. And
so it's like, he's with an NBC journalist or whatever. He's with some kind of thing. So maybe we're kind of going, okay, who's he with also? Like, so fine, but that's neither here nor there. And then he's kind of going up the stairs, and there's a woman in front of him. He's like talking about the woman's ass, and there's moments like that I don't really like when he does.
I know that actually turned me off that whole book for a while.
Yeah, I'm the hard-boiled journalist type.
Yeah.
Jaded and cynical, and I got a cigarette in my mouth, and So whenever he brings it back to himself, even in the Palestine stuff, there's one where it's like, you know, he's so like triggered all the time and all this kind of stuff, and then a young Arab kid steals his bag, like, and he's like, you dirty Arab. The first guy was like, you dirty Arab. I'm like, whoa, like, where did that come from? Like, you know,
Yeah.
and I like that he included that, like Joe Matt style, like warts and all. Like, here you can see how ugly I am. But I felt it actually wasn't that self-critical, and I was kind of like, whoa, that's telling, but you didn't. Like, so there's certain things. So I think there is a certain amount of stuff in Joe Sacco's work that is not like strict journal. Like, this is like, you know, you might as well just be like, you know, like I say, like a Chester Brown or something like that kind of thing. So
yeah, that's true. I mean, he does have that whole book that's about basically like traveling with a band, you know, and he's like touring with the band in Europe, and that's very much like in that same vein.
yeah,
It's just about himself, and he does have this thing, like there's a theme with a lot of guys who do graphic novels where it's this kind of like, it's Robert Crumb-esque, where this kind of like, I'm a disgusting dude and I'm like pitying myself and girls don't like me, but like I'm gonna show you all the reasons why I'm a terrible person. That's like, I don't know, like as a woman who loves graphic novels, I like those books, but at the same time I'm kind of like, I don't know, like,
yeah.
stop doing that.
It goes on for a long time. Like, I love Robert Crumb, but there's a whole period of like 20 years, like, I don't know, early 90s till, I don't know, 2000, where that's all he talked about was his like sexual proclivities and stuff and everything, and his fantasies and stuff. And I think there are a lot, I don't want to name names and all this kind of, but I think there are a lot of artists who really dug that, and they started doing their own versions of that, or they all kind of took parts of it and everything. When we're not like being recorded, we'll
Yeah, okay.
like,
Yeah.
But yeah, me too. I really, you know, and it's fine. Every right to do it, but just it's not only
It's not my cup of tea all the time.
What's that?
It's not always my cup of tea.
No. And
yeah, I totally recognize that. Like, my book is not going to be everyone's cup of tea either.
But if it's not, I mean, it's just for very different reasons. It's like, but your book is like I can't see someone kind of looking at this and saying like, oh, there's an agenda, or oh, that's not the right history. No, she has it all. Yeah. You're really just like talking about your experiences going through, talking to people, what you experience. So that's why I find it such a great vehicle for the message, and which is basically like compassion, humanity, and also like just kind of like opening. Like even now during COVID and stuff, I notice I say and stuff all the time. I say and stuff and everything. Oh my god.
Yeah.
It's so bad, but it's really like we don't think about. No one's talking about the poor, right? And it's like it's like a literal living hell for these people that make up such a huge percentage of the population who don't have the privilege to social distance, who don't have the privilege to not work or try to find work. All these different things, and in your book, it's pretty damn clear across the board for all different about poverty and not having and being vulnerable, and the kind of like the reality of the sociopathic systems that we live under. Like there's no one there saying we're going to care for you, humanity first, children first. Like, how are you feeling? You know, there's one gag, one cartoon where there's like a woman lying on the ground and she's all disemboweled and stuff, and the cop is saying to her, okay, let's try this again.
Or your place of birth or whatever. Yeah. I actually like, that's one of my favorites.
I mean, that's like right out of like what's happening in the States in the detention centers, right? It's like, it's just, I mean, people are dying, and it's like, well,
hide behind this bureaucracy. It's important to get the numbers straight, and we got to protect ourselves against these people. It's like, there was a lot of discussion like that in Hungary about like protecting ourselves, and like, from what? Yeah, you know, like, I mean, whatever, I get into it in the book, but you know, there was hundreds of thousands, I think, of Hungarian refugees that left after 56. And you know, like there's still kind of a lot of people in Hungary who are bitter about the fact that America didn't come to back them up during that time, that you know, a revolution that they were trying to have. And it's like, then they're in this situation where there's people literally at their doorstep asking for the same type of help, and they're like, screw you guys, you know.
Mhm.
to protect ourselves. But I want to talk about my favorite things in your book. Actually, do you want to? Okay, so I had a chance to sort of like talk about some stuff, but in terms of themes with you, with your comics, it's like, you know, there's a little bit of everything, right? There's a lot of humor there, and there's like a lot of like moments where I was like laughing out loud. But then there's a lot of themes there too about, you know, like people not being good to each other, just people being really inhumane to one another. So that's a theme. I was wondering if you know who Bill Malden is.
Bill Malden. Guys, that sounds. I'm confused with Carl Malden. Bill
Well,
Malden.
he's like, Bill Malden did comics, like he kind of wrote the original G.I. Joe comics. Like he was a vet, he was in World War II, and he was like drawing comics on the front, and he was printing them in their little newspaper that they used to make for the soldiers. Anyway, this reminded me a lot.
Oh wow.
That's
M
one of my favorite pages from your book. I thought that was just really powerful image.
Maulden.
Maudin.
Bill Malden.
Yeah.
And he really had a comic called G.I. Joe? Nothing.
No, it was called I think it went through different names, Stars and Stripes or something like that. It's one pagers like this, you know, like Gary Larson style, often with a punchline. Like there's a lot of humor there, but
Was
some
it heavy also? Were they like some of them were heavy and
very, very heavy, some of them, yeah. And a lot of them were just pen and ink drawings of his views from like being on the front lines. Really good. But yeah, no, I think your work is interesting because it is kind of like, some of it's like a super fun and crazy frolic through like, you know, comedic crazy stuff that's going on in your brain. And then a lot of it is kind of like a delving into the depths of human despair.
That is my way.
Yeah. My way. Yeah, it was really interesting. Like there's such a variety there. So like as I was reading it, because I was kind of going back to it and I was like rereading it over like the past couple of weeks, and it like I was like, wow, it really depends on my mood what I get from this book. If I'm in like a really great mood, I'm reading it and I'm like, ha ha ha, I love this. And then like if I'm in like a bit of a bad mood or having a moody day, it's like, wow, you know, like, yeah, Howard gets it. People are so bad to each other. I'm just wondering what you get out of it, you know, like.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah, that's the majority of my work is kind of like, it's that thing. It's like, I like you're talking about humor, you know, humor, trying to reach people through humor and stuff. And I guess, I guess that's the goal for everything I try to do. But I'm also trying to, like, I really do try to do this kind of like therapeutic, like get it out, like, you know. My whole life, I've always kind of been at war with the system, but that includes the art world. And I always find it funny that artists love to, when I say artists, I'm talking more like the art world rather, like maybe not individual artists, you know, like love artists, of course, and love art. But it's this thing that like you can point the finger at doctors and the pharmaceutical companies and the politicians, but never at ourselves, you know, never. And we have an industry, we have an art industry, we have an art world, we have a hierarchy, we have a lot of bullshit. When you want to walk into the museum in Montreal, there's a Volkswagen parked right in the middle of it because it's funded by Volkswagen and De Maurier cigarettes and all this kind of. It's like, this is ridiculous, you know?
Yeah.
I had someone once get really mad at me, an artist, because they were talking about, we were doing like, you know, trying for grants all the time, you know, we always have to scratch and claw trying to find where we can get money and stuff. And which is what is particularly sad about this time. Like, you worked hard in your book, I worked hard in my book. And this is the time that we'd be reaping the fruits of our labors, right? We'd be at TCAF, you're going to different festivals, you're doing promotion. It's all, so now we're trying to do, you know, so it's kind of sad. Of course, everyone's suffering. And I've just been talking from a cartoonist perspective, you know, and artist perspective. So you hear people kind of getting mad at anyone that kind of shit talks corporate funding or corporate grants. I'm like, well, you have like this art world where at least a segment of it, part of it is supposed to be like, hey, we're different, you know, change the system, change consciousness. We're trying to show you different things. Of course, there's parts of the art world that are just like, you know, yeah,
give me money.
Yeah, give me money, Zig Heil, whatever they want to do. It's art, whatever. But I like to consider myself as part of one of the artists who are trying to, would like to, imagine a different world change. And so when someone gets mad, another artist gets mad at you because you don't like the idea of corporate grants, and I mean that just goes, we're part of the system too, for the most part, So, so I guess in my art, I'm trying to walk this fine line of reaching people, communicating while still trying to get a laugh, while trying not to alienate anyone, while still trying to make a bridge, kind of, And that's why we were talking the other day about like me being afraid of offending people. It's a hard thing. I don't want to pussyfoot around stuff. I want to be able to say what I want to say, but I don't want someone who has a different worldview than me to look at it and go, oh, this is some lefty, or whatever however they want to see it,
Yeah.
And I think that's what's missing in the left today, and a lot of art today, is reaching people, trying to actually reach people, like people that don't think the way you think.
Yeah.
Because chances are, just scratch a little bit, and they're actually quite fine people, probably, and fine people on both sides. No, sorry. And to quote a great man,
underrated thinker of our time.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why. So I don't know, and some of the stuff in the book is actually just like not what I consider dirty jokes. I'm trying to be subversive also with like superhero comics and all this kind of stuff.
Masculinity, like that sort of subversion of like masculine ideals are it's pervasive here too, I feel like.
Yeah, I really try, I find it really it's amazing to this day. Like, again, people get upset with me, but you look at stuff like DC Comics, Marvel Comics, and like violence solves everything. All the women are hanging out of their skin-tight clothes, especially like in DC Comics. I just find it like, and to this day you'll see, and I know I'm going to be offending a lot of comic fans and whoever's watching, whatever, if they like superhero stuff, but it's kind of, I can't stand it. Like if I really loved superhero comics, like I still do read stuff. I can't help it. I watch all the cartoons and all. The little kid in me still, I stopped reading superhero stuff at the age of like 12, 14. But I still, if someone passes me a comic, I'll still look at it because the art is so well done, like compared to what I grew up with. Like these are real artists. They know how to.
Yeah.
I would have gone crazy when I was a kid. There was like Frank Frazetta and Simon Bisley and just like a handful of people who really drew, like Jim Steranka. But now it's like, all these fine artists have transferred over into comics, and they do. So but it's what they're writing about. And when they try to talk about serious things like domestic violence or war or social issue, I'm like, oh my God, it's like a bunch of like people stuck in pre-adolescence with them. I find it so angering, so offensive, I try, there's nothing specifically about that in the book, but it's just to attack all these norms. But I guess, but that's it. Yeah, I'd like for people to, when they look at the gag cartoons, I'd like for them to laugh.
Yeah.
But if there's something that's more kind of serious, if it's about how we see ourselves or about war or society, I would like for that to be able to reach as wide a people as possible.
Totally. Here, I'm gonna show people a couple more of my faves.
Okay. Oh.
I love this one. Off to work, kiss for death. It's like, come on, death is doing an important job. We all complain about death, but somebody's got to do it.
A little romantic photo of them in the background when they're.
I see a little family portrait. I'm like, I thought that was sweet. I mean, this is an example actually of like the different, like bringing my daily vibe, whatever that might be, to the book. Was like the first time that I saw that one, the Off to Work Kiss for Death, it actually made me think about people whose literal job is execution.
Oh yeah, shit.
And I was like, yeah, those people probably have like wives at home that give them a kiss before they go to work. And I was just like getting into that whole thing. But then, spring is here now in Halifax, and like we're getting flowers are coming up and stuff. And I was like, yeah, it's all a cycle of life, and like death has to happen, for all these flowers to exist. They have to be like living off of like the dead and decaying stuff that was there last year. And it's just more of a positive spin on it, but it just goes to show that you can like look at your work in so many different ways. I also really like this one. Just like, your drawings are great too. They're really expressive, but this like, you will always be alone. And then like this innocent, like, just there couldn't be a more like innocent, sweet like face on this person here. Like wasn't gunning for like a philosophical breakthrough, but that's what you get, right?
I noticed that, you know, it's funny when I, you know, you keep looking through the book, you work on it for for a couple of years, you keep going through, and then you start catching stuff like later. It's like really funny. But I noticed that there are actually a few, at least one other one or two other ones where there's an insect like giving some kind of wisdom to
Yes.
or giving hell to I never noticed that.
It's something that you didn't even know there's a lot of fish in there too, Howard. What is it
Yeah.
with that?
I don't know. Fish. I noticed that like really after fish, squirrel.
Fish and bugs. They're the two things that vegetarians often claim they don't mind killing.
That's true. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
They're like, fish and bugs. You know, they probably don't have feelings.
Bugs. You know, like most of the world eats bugs, except we don't in the West.
Yeah.
But it's like an obvious kind of protein choice, right? Like I know they're trying to get
Yes.
pellets into every supermarket now these days, but
there's a thing too with bugs where it's like, I like how it's like they're imparting this wisdom, because you're like, sometimes wisdom just comes from, you know, like the least expected places. But you've also got great facial expressions. Like the way that you draw expressions is really, really lovely. And like, I like your drawing style a lot. I really like this one too.
I get a kick out of it. I am just like my father then.
And I'm like wearing like a polka dot robe or something.
He's just like this poor sad monster, you know?
Yeah.
His dad,
you can't help it.
Every tooth on him. It's funny because I was concerned that the different styles of drawing, because I don't like being, when you look at most cartoonists, people who do like gag cartoons, they always draw in this very uniform style, except for a guy like Kleban, which I really excited. Most part he does, but every here and there you'll see he'll do something in a different, this one will be in pencil, or this one will be, you know, a little more rough or whatever. And I love this, but I was concerned, like, because, you know, Andy first, when he was doing the promo for the book, he said, in the spirit of Ivan Brunetti. And I don't know if you know who Ivan Brunetti is. He's a comic artist, cartoonist. Like, he's a class, like, top shelf cartoon. Like, he can ape anybody's style. He's one of those guys that can draw like anybody. He can draw like you. He can draw like me. He can do it, you know. But he's also a great cartoonist. But, and this is not a negative, because I love his work. His gag cartoons are, I think, consciously, deliberately misanthropic. Like it's meant and to shock. Like, not in a bad way. I really enjoy them. I love them. I have a couple here, but it's like pedophilia and murder and misogyny, and he's not for it.
Pushing it in your face, though, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's really to make you go like, oh shit, oh my god. That's the thing, right? I would not say that they're warm. I don't think he intends them to be warm. I intend for my things to be warm. Like, I want them. I feel like my drawing style is warm, and I want it to be warm and that kind of thing.
It is.
And so I was telling Andy, like, ooh, that's a bad, put Kleban. He's like, Howard, nobody knows. I didn't even know who Kleban was. Nobody knows who Kleban was, you know?
The realism of Andy comes in.
Yeah. Oh, Howard. Nobody knows.
Like, I'm going to have to market this book, Howard.
Exactly. He's the king. He's
not
King
going to
Kleban.
someone nobody knows.
Nobody knows who the fuck he is.
You just feed my kids, Howard.
Oh my God. But he did change it, and he took away the Brunetti thing, because I didn't want, so but yeah, I don't remember why I was going to this one, but definitely, yeah, it's, oh, you're talking like the facial expressions and stuff. So I was just trying to make things like, so I was concerned that maybe the different drawing styles would be, because even Ivan Brunetti, he draws in this very uniform style, and Gary Larson draws in a uniform style. So, but I've only got good feedback from it. But then I just did an interview with Philippe Leblanc from the Comics Beat, and he too. Yeah, that's right. All the Canadians, we all got, very nice fellow, eh? What a nice guy.
Very nice, yeah.
And he knows his stuff, and he's just very sweet, and but a really good guy. And I felt good because he told me, he said, if you were familiar with my writing, if I didn't like something, I would say it, kind of thing. So I felt good, like, phew, like, you know.
Yeah, honestly.
And but he said that the different drawing styles he loved, because it felt like he was able to go, like, it flowed, like it was able, like, a variety of styles, and so that made me feel good. So I was happy about that.
You know what I think? Like, the way that it affected me was just like, your mood came through in the different styles. And so some of them are almost like Felix the Cat, like, you know, like that sort of like really early animation style, like rounded and like sort of, let me see if I can find one. Soft and sweet.
Traditional cartoony kind of.
Yeah, like here's a good example. Like
Now fall one. That's funny.
I love this one. Here, I'm covering up the
I just
lettering.
pulled this dick. That's all I swear. I have like four versions of that, and because I know
I love the tiger's face and his little hands. Like this is very, like early, like Mickey Mouse.
Maestro Brothers.
Yeah.
What's funny is like, so that's a lot of stuff is very sketchy, but I redraw those things over and over and over again with a light table, and I kind of keep the sketchy kind of thing. And some of them I was like, well, no, maybe it should be a little more slick, but I showed it around to a few people, and everyone liked that original one more, and so did I.
Yeah.
So sometimes that's it. Sometimes the original gesture, you can't really
recreate it.
Yeah, there's something about it, so I kind of kept it. It's like the way I kind of do it is like the book, most of the stuff, I don't know if you can say, most of the stuff that's already published all kind of goes in these drawers.
Yeah.
And as I work on stuff, let's see. So this is all like since like January. So because the book is done and the book is all under here. This is all the book. I have to transfer them over.
Oh, wow.
But then these are all. This is only gag cartoons, not comics. So all these here, this is all since January. These are all rejects. This is all stuff that's like worth keeping because I kind of something about it I like. Well, maybe in 10 years I'll look at it, kind of thing. And then these are ones that kind of pass muster. So these are all for I guess the next gag cartoon book. This will be the stuff to choose from. And here's these are just dirty. This little folder here, can you see? These are dirty ones. These are ones that Andy will never ever publish. These are all the dirty ones here that Andy would never ever publish. And, although he did put a Jacko-Man in there, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that actually made it through.
Do you kind of self edit that? You're like, Andy won't even want to see this, or does he send them back to you? Does he give you feedback?
If I like it enough, even if it's dirty, like if I think there's some kind of meaning to it, like if it's subversive in some way or something, then I'll try. Andy was amazing this time. The only thing he nixed were like because of content were about 3 drawings that he felt had like child mutilation in it, and he was sensitive to it because he's a dad and stuff and everything. But yet he allowed 3 in there with child mutilation in there. So it's kind of like. But if you saw them, I'd have to like go through those piles to find them. But it's like it's like a soldier with a bayonet and a baby at the end of it crying and saying, what's it called, spoils of war or something like that.
Yeah. But the point behind it was,
Yeah, like come on, we kill babies in war. Like let's get real. That kind of thing.
It's true, we do. Yeah.
And why pussyfoot around and kind of thing,
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the process. And then comics and stuff is in a different section, and that's going to be the next. That's what I'm going to try to do for the next book, just mostly comics. But in the meantime, doing gag cartoons is great because you can just kind of work on them and just compile them as you're working on other stuff. You can just always kind of keep building. That's it. So I had to go through, I mean, God, I don't know, like thousands of drawings. And then you kind of like cull it, like you say, well, maybe because the book was supposed to be 250 pages. I think it came to 244 or something.
Yeah.
And so it's just a question of making editorial choices, like which are the best ones. So when Andy would come in, it was less about content, more about, well, maybe this one over that one, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And Joe Ullman came one night to look also. He came to town and he went through them. I gave me his 2 cents. Billy Maveas came over quickly one night too to give his, just give feedback. And that was it, because I guess everyone's kind of scattered now. So, I was.
Yeah. So, but it's interesting, like you, I think it's great. I mean, it seems like you're also really productive. I mean, do you do like a little sketch every day, or like? Yeah,
I draw every day, and I try to do a gag cartoon every day, or try at least something like building blocks for it, Yeah. Like there's some that in here that I didn't have a punchline for a long, long time, or I had multiple punchlines. Let's see if I can find here. I don't like always too much fun looking.
Too many punchlines.
The one with the flower headed creature kind of feeding the people in a potted plant. It says, "Dad, where's Mom been?"
Oh yeah.
I had about maybe 20 other punchlines for that. And at the book launch, because we were projecting all the images on the screen, and so I read all the other punchlines, and Tom Devlin from John and Corley was all pissed off that I didn't use, like, he thought 2 of them were way better than the one that I used. That shook me a bit. I was like, oh shit, did I choose the bad punchline now? But I'm confident, I'm happy with what I chose. So
do you do this a lot? Do you like ask for feedback from people before publishing?
Well, for the gag cartoon stuff, I mean, like the last book was a mix of comics and gag cartoons. I guess, yeah, there was a maybe, I mean, just because we're friends. I mean,
Yeah.
but just maybe just like people like I trust, like, you know, like I trust Joe and I trust Billy. My best buddy, comics buddy, Bernie Moreau, comics legend Bernie Moreau, lives in Rodden, Quebec. So he's not here right now. He hasn't been here for a couple of years, so he's not around to give the feedback. But I guess just before, just I mean, just when there's so much stuff like that, but
Yeah,
I would be less interested in that kind of feedback for comic stories.
yeah.
It's just not the same. It's like you've done the page already. You've done the whole. You know, what am I gonna do? I'm gonna cut out this panel and what? You know, it's like
Yeah, it's true. I was like, I kept on thinking I was like, that should be part of my process. I should show people the roughs and then get their feedback, because what I was worried about was that what would make sense to me wouldn't make sense to somebody else who was reading it. But I ran out of time, so I didn't do that.
Oh no, the book is slick and smooth. I don't. It's really great. It's perfect like that. It's just also I understand obviously, you know, the different publishers, you know, Drawn and Quarterly, even artists like, you know, like the late Harvey Picard, all this, they like that kind of editorial input. No, change this panel, send me your pencils first. We're gonna see that, and I get it. And if it was like a long-term project and the publisher was involved in that way, sure, of course, you know, you see the pencils, I'd be open to that, no problem. It's just that when I'm doing my own work and it's done, like it's no one's,
Yeah.
you know, then I'm not going to go and change that because someone, you know, it's like telling someone to change a painting or something. It's what can you do? It's, you know, for fiction is different. You know, it's easy to change a sentence or if you have a typo or something.
Yes, I know. That's like, I kept on thinking about that. I'm not a writer. And it actually, I had finished a lot of the book before I even started doing dialogue and text. Because I find that part really hard. I'm a lot more comfortable with the visuals than I am with the writing part.
Well, you're a fantastic storyteller. It's a really seamless story, and it's a great narrative, and from begin to end, like, I mean, like you are a solid writer, and this
Thank
is
you.
that's the thing. It's like, you know, fiction is so different. I don't know if you ever write fiction or, but it's like, you know, comics writing is so different because obviously the image is telling so much. You know,
Yeah.
1,000 words.
I feel like graphic novels are much more similar to film than to books.
100%, right? And it's like the biggest mistake. I still do teach comics. Obviously, nothing's happening now. But when I used to do my adult classes, that was the thing you would always see the most. Like you get people who can just draw up a storm, like incredible artists. They want to do comics. They don't understand the language of comics, even though they read comics.
Mm-hmm.
And they just have the most common thing you'd see would be like someone walking through the door. I walked through the door. I sat down. They draw them sitting. It's like, well, I see you're sitting down. You don't have to
explain that.
Yeah, it's just natural. People think like I don't know, maybe they don't see the power of the image, or they feel it has to be kind of like, you know. But so the balance of images and text to convey the narrative, to tell the story, it's a great job. And because you're dealing with such sensitive issues and emotional issues, and there is this arc to the story, yeah, huge success, you know. So
thank you. Hey, can I ask you a question? Do you come up with the punchlines for your things first, or did the image come first and then you come up with punchlines after?
But I'd say a percentage of the time you're just walking around and a gag, you know, pops into your head, and then you know, I'll take a note on my phone or something. I'll write it on a piece of paper, so then I have it. It's done. So I just have to draw it, and it's all set, you know. Sometimes I'll be just drawing, and then as I'm drawing, I'm like, oh, I see the punch. I see where this is going. And I get the punchline. Sometimes there's a punchline first, and I'm not sure what to draw, so I kind of draw it over and over and over again, kind of thing. It's funny, like some of the stuff like that looks sketchy. It's just like I was saying, like it really, I like that. Like I touched that what you said about how some of the drawings kind of convey like a different mood or what I'm feeling, and that's it. It's like sometimes if it's in a big pen, it's just there's a feeling I can't explain. To me, there's a feeling. I've avoided my whole life publish anything that was drawn with a big pen, that kind of thing. But it's a tool I love using, just a regular old pen, and it has a feeling, and pencil has a feeling. And so some of the things I would look at it and I would say, I want to draw this differently, and I would light table it. I would try with different medium. I'll try with a pencil, or try with an ink pen, or with like a like a technical, they call it what do you call these technical pens? Whatever they're called these days.
Yes, yeah.
But in the end, it was like, oh no, the big pen was the one, that kind of thing.
Yes, I found that too. Like I mean, I don't know what I'm gonna like. I have like now mountains and mountains of pencil drawings, storyboard for the book, and I look back at them, and I really like some of them more than the finished things, because like the finished pages, I was just so at times I'd be like so uptight that I would mess it up, that I was really careful and really slow with how I was drawing it, and then you lose a lot of that expressive quality that you have when you're just flowing with the pencil. What
do you think it is? The gestural part of it? Do you think that's what it is, or just like that initial inspiration or something? Or
I think it's because when I'm drawing and I'm not worried about it being the final page, I'm like, I draw really fast and I'm going with the emotion that I have. So like I don't know, I must look kind of ridiculous when I'm working, because like if I'm doing a sad scene, like my face is all sad. I'm like feeling sad. I'm like trying to feel the feelings that I'm trying to do.
Of course, that's awesome. That's what it's supposed to be. That's how it's supposed to be. I was trying to, it's funny, I had this one student one time, like adult student, and she wanted to draw like the feeling of like the anger, the emotion. And so she would do this kind of, but she didn't really know how to draw. I'd say you have to find a way to convey that, but still slow down so you can, like maybe kind of pencil up, then after you can go. But I said, one thing you can do is with your face, like exactly just kind of like feel it. Go like,
yeah. Yes. Yeah. Feel it. And it helps you draw it. And then I have a light table too. And I use the light table. Like, thank goodness for light tables, because I don't know what I would do otherwise. I want to show one more of you things that I love. This one also. I imagine you came up with that punchline before you drew that image, because it's just a funny sentence.
I think with that one, actually what happened was I started drawing the turtle, and then I decided I was just going to draw like this human face, and it came out like that. And then the punchline hit me. That's an example of one where like once I drew the face, I was like, oh, there's got to be a director in the background going, like that, because that was not a planned face. It just I just started, you get on these little tangents. Like, I'm going to start drawing like scary stuffed animals. I'm going to start drawing animals with faces, that kind of thing. Sure. I don't know where we are now, but I was trying to work on a series like that, and I think that was where I was kind of going. But then when his face came out all like.
And I just can't imagine any animal having less star quality than a turtle. Perfect.
There's also a little bit of a mistake, a little bit of an error with that kind of gag. Is like he discovers this. No, I guess not. I guess I'll say he discovers the turtle, but meanwhile all the film equipment's already there.
Yeah,
they're all. On a shot. They were doing a shot. They were already filming a scene, and then he discovers the turtle while he's filming. I guess.
Oh my god. It's just funny because it makes my mind go to like several different things. Like when I was a kid, I'm a nature freak. I love like hiking and getting to nature, and actually seeing a turtle in the wild is really exciting. So you're like, they just sit on logs in the water, but it was always like, oh, a turtle! And
amazing, they're amazing.
Staring at it and just sitting on the log. So it made me think of that, but it also makes me think about American Idol. Like all those shows, just like normal people just like auditioning their little hearts out, and like just being so average.
There was one guy on the British, I guess it's called British Idol or something, or Britain's Got Talent or whatever it was, or this kind of thing. This is from a few years ago. He became like a little bit of an internet sensation. But there's some guy who I think he was a postman or a butcher or something, and just like this regular dude, and he comes on and they played up his plainness so much. Like they were just kind of falling short, going, look how ugly he is.
Yeah.
Look how physically unimpressive he is. Yeah. Look at this guy. You wouldn't even, like, it was making me angry and angry.
Yeah.
And then he comes out and then you have all the judges who are like these plastic, God knows what these people are.
They're all like skeptical. Yeah.
And they're kind of looking at him and then he's like, and they're sobbing and they're crying, all these plastic people, right? And it's like, I'm just thinking like
I can't believe that an average looking person could be a real talented person.
Oh my God, he was just a postman. He's just this piece of shit, like a subhuman, but he can sing. Oh my God, look the tears. He's a human being. Like, fuck you. Like, fuck you. Like, it's like
that. Is so, it's like, I wouldn't, I wouldn't deign to let him polish my shoe, but
oh my God.
his voice is amazing.
the way they edited also, like before he's all like, they really played up his like, maybe he's autistic, or maybe he's not a normal person, or maybe,
Oh my God.
it drives me crazy. Yeah. So I see what you're saying. Like, that turtle is a star. No.
Yeah, totally.
Wow, thanks for. I'm always interested to see which ones people like, and there's certain ones that I really love that like no one mentions. Like, why?
What is your favorite? What are your favorites?
I think they've since been mentioned, so I got my thrill anyway. Well, I'll just point out one that I thought would, just because it has a history, and it's not that it's. I think the drawing is so great. I think the gag is so great. It's just I really thought. I got good feedback from it, so I shouldn't complain. I mean, there's literally like 250 drawings in here, so I shouldn't complain about like.
No, I understand. You can be precious.
There's some. This is one that I wasn't sure people were gonna get. Like, this is not the one I was gonna choose, but you know who this character is? Man-Thing. He's a Marvel Comics character.
Okay, I didn't know that was a Marvel Comics character.
Yeah, he's like Swamp Thing and Man-Thing came out at the same time, like 3 days apart. Technically, I think Man-Thing came like 3 days earlier. Goes back to like my my early nerdy. And here's Doctor Strange and there's Spider-Man.
Yeah.
So Man-Thing is now kind of dressed like a Lubavitch Jew.
Yeah.
And he let his roots grow out like payas and stuff and everything.
Yeah.
Which I actually found hard to draw. I was like, how do I draw this? I should have done it like in white anyway. And so Doctor Strange is kind of just like noticing that he's, he's becoming like kind of like a born again kind of, So
born again. Yeah. It's actually interesting that you mentioned that one, because I had a bookmark in that one too, because I wanted to ask you about it. I didn't know that was a Marvel character. I was like, what was this?
He's sad. I've always loved, when I was younger, I used to really love more sad, outcast DC ones. Marvel characters like Hulk and Man-Thing, and just the monsters, basically.
Yeah.
Right?
The Hulk is great. It's such a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, and that's just a kind of a timeless tale.
Yeah, everyone hates him. He's so misunderstood, and the one that I don't know if I can find it, but there's one with a genie. The genie one. I'd have to kind of see if I can find it. I'll give myself like a 5-second hunt limit. If I can't find it in 5 seconds, 3. I found it. So it's this one here. I don't know if to read, but it's kind of long. It's basically.
Oh yeah.
Right. So he says his first wish is for all of his wishes to be granted exactly as he imagines them, without ironic results or consequences. His second wish is to have all the magical powers of a genie, and his third is to be able to use those powers for his own use in any way he sees fit, without limit. Can we really do this? It's kind of a mouthful to read off the top like that.
Oh, there's 2 things that I loved about that one. The first one was that kid has obviously thought so much about that moment. Like, if that moment comes, I know exactly what I'm going to say.
Exactly.
All my bases are covered. And then the other thing I loved about it was that the genie made a telephone appear on the side of a tree.
Exactly. It's special magical.
Just a second.
You wouldn't exactly have a cell, right? It's like
I just need this phone that I will make pop out of this tree.
And the kid's cool, he's holding them out. That's because
you can make that call. I'm pretty sure I covered all my bases, though.
That's it, yeah. I thought about that since childhood. When I had a really kind of rough, bad childhood, and teenhood, and young adulthood, and basically, like, I guess I had this fantasy of that this is going to happen. There's a Tomi Ungerer book called The Hat. I don't know if you know his work. He's a great artist, comic artist, and kids book author and adult book author.
Yeah,
and
I'm more familiar with the kids books, but yeah.
Yeah, The Hat is a kids book, and it was like my Bible when I was a kid, which is basically like, again, like bad life. So I just want to kind of get through this as easy as possible, because everything's so bad and sucky, and maybe the Holocaust background kind of stuff. But it's like in the Hat, there's a war veteran who's missing a leg and he's dirt poor. And when the book starts off, there's a very rich couple, and this top hat blows off the rich man's head and goes in the wind hither and thither, and it lands on the head of the homeless war veteran. But the hat is magical, and it just makes his life better and better. It does all these things, and starts off with a flower pot falling out of a window, about to smash the head of a rich man, and the hat flies off his head, the poor man's head.
Yeah.
So the rich man goes like, "Oh, you saved my life. Here, let me reward you." And I'm like, "That's what I want." Like, this is.
Oh my God, Charlie Chaplin. Yes.
This is my ticket. So since there's no magical hat, but there are evidently magical lamps around with genies in them when you're a kid.
I keep on hearing about these magical lamps.
I would fucking rub any goddamn thing that looked like a lamp. When I was a kid, I would rub everything. I was just trying to get, I just thought it's going to happen. If I willed it.
Yeah.
Aliens to come. They'll see I'm a good kid. They'll see I'm a good person. The aliens will come. They'll save me. The genie will save me, you know? Then I must have seen something, well, everything where the wishes always go wrong. So I thought there's got to be a way around this. So that formula has been around since I was a kid.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'm going to use this one day, you know? And I started writing this, I'll just sum this up quickly because I'm rambling, but I was doing this kids book, which I still intend to do, called, it was gonna be Joseph and the Lamp, or Charles and the Lamp. I think it's gonna be Miriam and the Lamp. I'm gonna try a different name. I'm trying to find like a name that really matches all cultures and stuff. But basically, the third wish is supposed to be like, so he says like, I want all the powers of the genie without any ironic consequences, like that kind of thing. And then I want to be able to use it for myself. But the third wish is that now he has the powers of the genie, is he says to the genie, I would like to know what your wish is. So if it's a malevolent wish, he's not going to grant it. But if it's a sweet, so the genie goes, really, what I'd love to be is just free of this. I hate this gig. This is all.
Yeah. Trapped in the lamp all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would suck. I mean, I don't know where genies go when they go back in the lamp, but maybe they go to another dimension where everything's great, and then just someone rings a bell and they're like compelled to exit that world through a lamp. But it seems like they might just be in limbo, you know?
That's it. Yeah. There's a I love all the old Sinbad movies. There's a Golden Voyage, and I don't remember if it's Golden Voyage or Seventh Voyage of Sinbad, but there's a little kid, he's a genie, but they go into the lamp, and his lamp is like a cool pad. It's kind of like a 60s kind of cool, like, pillows on the floor, kind of Eastern, riffing off the Eastern idea kind of thing.
Yeah.
But he talks about how unhappy he is. I am just unhappy in this world. So that probably got my little kid mind. I've seen that movie a billion times, so that probably stuck in there. But yeah, for the book, for the kids' book, yeah, the idea is kind of like that. Yeah, like they're just kind of around like, in the middle of a sandwich and they got to go because they've been summoned and they got to go. Yeah. But they don't want to be part of the gig. But for the gag cartoon, it's just more like I want to be omnipotent, basically.
Yeah, it's good. Good. I don't know if I had similar like fantasies as a kid about the lamp with the genie and stuff, but I definitely did wish that I had superpowers. And like I remember I really, like, when you're a kid, like everything is so intense, like in your head, like what you're describing, like if I just believe in it hard enough, like it'll come true for sure. Like I was like, if I believe hard enough that I can talk to animals.
Yes, that's it.
That was one of my I don't know why, but I really wanted to be able to communicate with the animals.
Yeah.
And like be one with them.
This is
also control the weather, like control the wind. I wanted to be able to do that, but purely to impress people, like purely as a party trick. I'd be like, like imagining in my head like some bully at school being mean, and then I just like raise my hand, and then the wind would blow. They would all leave me alone.
Aurora did that come from like Aurora from X-Men or something?
No, I didn't even know about X-Men at that point. Like when I was a kid, the only comics that I read were I started out with, I had a weird collection of books that I got at a church yard sale, and there was a bunch of old Archies.
I was gonna say Archie, right? It's always Archie.
Yes. Old Archies, like I was such a snob about Archies. I really liked the drawings that were like
the vintage ones,
40s vintage looking ones.
Yeah, of course.
I loved those. And then when I got into the 90s, I was like, this is trash. I'm not even gonna look at these drawings. Yeah. But then Beetle Bailey. Do you know Beetle Bailey? I had like a stack of those, and I mean a lot of the stuff went over my head because I was like 8. So I didn't get any of those like dirty jokes that they were like putting in there, but I really liked Beetle Bailey too, because it was there. And then Calvin and Hobbes.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I just gotta look up because I said Mort Drucker, and since we're being watched by comics people, I have to make sure I use the right Beetle. It is Mort Drucker. Beetle Bailey. Mort Walker. Oh, that's good. Yeah, Mort Drucker's Mad Magazine.
Yeah.
Mort Walker. Of course. That's good. I'm happy I did that. And here I am with my, whoop, that's funny. Where are you?
Oh, can you not see me?
Oh, there you go. Just to show you, I'm wearing my Mad Magazine.
Yes!
There we go. Mort Drucker actually just died. That's why it was in my head. He actually just died.
That's right. Yeah.
Walker, yeah. There's actually a very interesting comic drawn by Mort Walker, I think, about him and Johnny Hart, the one who used to draw BC. You ever read BC?
No.
Comic came out at the same time as a Caveman. It was a newspaper, syndicated newspaper strip, BC, and they did a comic together. I don't know who drew it, but they're both in it about Liechtenstein, about being pissed off that they saw a comics panel that Liechtenstein ripped off.
Yeah.
To make into his paintings, and they're like, we're going to confront him. He's going to be talking at or they invite him at some comics event kind of thing, and then he wins them over. Liechtenstein wins them over. And it's terrible because at first they're kind of saying, well, he just ripped this guy off. And, oh, he's just a working stiff, just trying to make a living. Meanwhile, he's like making $0. Anyway. So yeah, that's an interesting comic like that. That's so funny, Archie. That's on everyone's like early list. And,
they were the most accessible comic. They were at the candy store, which was, the only store I knew of as a kid that I cared about.
That's right.
So yeah, I would buy Archies at the candy store, and I had a whole pile of the older ones, and then I don't know, like there was Scholastic books. The Scholastic books would come, and like you could check off the books you wanted to order, and Calvin and Hobbes was in there, and Garfield, and then I loved Garfield too, and I still love the character of Garfield just as like a cynical, grumpy, lazy, gluttonous cat. I'm like, I love this.
That's how children learn sarcasm. It's
yes.
They all learn from Garfield. Rolling the eyes and going, why bother, and all this kind of stuff. Archie is so demented. It's so perverted. It's so funny because I do have a soft spot for Archie comics, and I kind of went through a whole stage of like trying to like revisit them, like early Archie comics and Harvey comics, like Casper and Richie Rich and all that kind of stuff. That's my biggest influence because I find the drawing style so amazing in Harvey comimes. But exactly the same thing, the early ones, like it's so well drawn, and it gets it's a little bit lazier later or less. But the same thing with like when you look like the little Archie comics are drawn so well, you know, and then when it gets into like the 80s and 90s, it gets worse. But in Archie comics, like it's like the ultimate, like these are teenage girls, but they're sexualized to the point of ridiculousness. When there's almost in every issue when they're walking on the street, like in their bikinis, like there'll be men, like fat, bald men who are in their 40s going, ugh, and like holding their crotches and like, ugh. It's like, well, I guess they're not, shying away from the fact that these are sex pots kind of thing, like fully developed, And Archie is always getting, like he'll come at Mr. Lodge's house and his arm is broken, his leg is broken, like an adult is literally breaking the limbs of this teenager. Moose is like a violent sociopath, like killing it's great when you really look at Archie comics. They're really perverted and demented,
Absolutely, they totally are, and it's really weird. And I had this conversation with a friend of mine about Archie like years ago, and how it was funny that like we would talk with people about how we liked Archies when we were younger, and they were like, "Oh, did you have a crush on Archie or like Reggie?" And we're like, "No, obviously you had a crush on Betty and Veronica."
That is like, I've never thought of that before. Of course, all the boys growing up, we look at Betty and Veronica and Madge, and they're all the same woman, just with different hairdos, right?
Yes.
We'd go crazy. I even thought Big Ethel was good looking. I couldn't understand why they were making Big Ethel. She's a good looking girl. What are you talking about, And but yeah, I never ever for the life of me, considering that probably the majority of the readership is female for Archie comics, I never thought, do girls find Reggie and no, right? Because they're not drawn handsome.
No, right? Like they're not attractive. Like either like Betty and Veronica are attractive, and so like girls were attracted to them. I don't think we ever talked about it when we were that age, but like anyway, I was, and people I've talked to now that we're adults and we can talk about that stuff, we're like, yeah, of course, like they were attractive. And Jughead.
Oh, Jughead was attractive?
Yeah, he was cool. He was the only one that was cool.
Nice.
I thought, he was weird. Like he was different and funny, and he wasn't interested in girls. And I think that like, to me, I was like, that's like, he hangs out with all these girls all the time, and he's not obsessed with them, you know? Whereas all the other male characters are like, drool coming out of their mouths and stuff, and they can't handle themselves. And Jughead is always just kind of like, I only care about hamburgers.
That's it. Yeah, he's like,
like I don't see what you guys are going on about?
I really wanted a Jughead hat when I was a kid. I didn't know
Yeah.
if that happened. My uncle had one.
Felt Jughead hat. Yeah,
Yeah.
with the little yellow square and the red triangle.
You know how they do it? You know how it's done?
No, but I would make one now and wear it.
Is that- you bring it back.
Bring it back.
They would take like old hat, like a fedora type hat, and they would cut the rim off.
Oh, I see.
And make this kind of like crown type thing and put pins on it.
Was Jughead's hat a reference to an earlier comic?
Oh, no, it was actually reference. That hat was a hat that kids wore at the time.
Okay, so it wasn't something that like it was Gasoline Alley or something like that.
I know I'm a little bit familiar with Gasoline Alley. I never really read too much of it because I find it kind of dry.
Yeah.
But no offense to it. I know it's a beautiful, important piece of work and stuff. I just never really got into it. But I know my uncle, like again, like my family's so old, right? Like these are like, so there's pictures of him.
You're like, my uncle had a Jughead hat.
He had a Jughead hat, and that predates Jughead, you know?
Whoa!
He had a Jughead hat. No pins, but the crown.
Yeah. Cool. So that was the style. That was kids' street style.
Kids' street style, literally stickball with those hats and that kind of thing. And
that was the day, Howard, before computers. When the only entertainment was cutting up old hats.
I have a feeling if you and I were around in the 20s, we'd both be wearing hats like that.
Yeah, we would have been.
I know we've been talking for a bit. I just want to take a quick gander at my notes to make sure I didn't forget.
Yeah, sure. And I should do the same.
I have questions for Veronica. How long did it take you to make it?
Oh, yeah. It took a long time. But I was working on it part-time because I'm also a woodworking teacher.
Yeah, I love that, by the way. It's so awesome that you do that, God.
Thanks. It's down. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen with that now. Like all my classes are canceled for the near future and stuff. But I'm trying to take it as a moment I'm applying for some grants to just work on a comic book full time.
That's so great.
But it took, I like in earnest, when I like in earnestly started working on it was probably this fall of 2016.
Okay.
So like 4 years.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. Part time, and there was quite a bit of downtime in that, but yeah, the real push happened this past year.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You're not a computer person. I find that super interesting because mostly everybody uses Photoshop and stuff. I just can't do it because I don't really like computers to begin with. But it's kind of defeats the whole. I'd rather not even do art if that's the case. If I have to now go and it's just the whole point of it is the paper, the pen, the organic, the feeling.
Yes. It's true. It's a different thing. And I actually listened to an interview, and this is going to go out there, so I'll just like plug it. It's like this podcast called, I think, True North Comics or something.
Sure, I have heard of them.
Canadian comic podcast. They interviewed Alex and Chris Forbes and Chris Burton about the hermits.
Yeah, the Cursed Hermit.
Cursed Hermit. That's right. I'm like looking at my bookshelf. Like, can I see it from there?
Hobtown Murder Mysteries, the fantastic Hobtown
Murder Stories. Yes, so good. And they were talking about that style, and they were like, and I was like, yeah, I don't use a computer either. And I was like, cool, we're all in the same thing. And I actually, like, the big reason for me with that was, I don't like the feel of it. I like to feel the paper and feel the ink going on the paper. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if I would be able to get the same thing with technology. And also, B, it's really cost prohibitive.
Yeah.
You need to have like a good computer with like up-to-date software, one of those sketching pads and Photoshopping to pay for the program, and then you need to learn how to use it, which costs money because I would probably have to take a course because I'm so bad at that. Like, I don't have making comic books is not really raking in the big bucks for me here. Like, how am I supposed to afford that stuff?
That's crazy. I'm making millions.
I can see that, but you have a basement.
I got cigars and I have a basement. I have HB cigars. I thought, yeah, that was great. That was actually kind of like, it made me feel good to hear that too, because it's like everyone's on computers and it's like, yay.
Yeah.
Some, I was saying, I love the panel layouts, the composition of your book also.
Thank you.
You talk about, at one point you talk about anti-Semitism around there. You talk about Siberia at one point. They're talking about.
Yeah.
My uncle was. The bad. I won't like get too into Holocausty stuff, whatever, because it's heavy stuff. But like, he was my dad had 11 siblings. They were 11. So with him, 5 survived. The rest of them went to death camps and stuff. But my uncle saw his parents murdered in front of him, and then he fled into the woods, and then he was taken by the Russians, and he was in the Siberian death camp for 2 years and 2 months, and he was the last survivor of 1,500 men. They all got it's like crazy stories there. So all these, that's why there's so many.
Did they just starve to death, or were they worked to death, or?
Well, they were liberated when the war broke out, and then he was conscripted into the Polish army, and then they were flown to the Middle East. And then he saw, when he was marching, he saw a sign in Hebrew that said Palestine. So he held back as if he had to pee kind of thing. And then he just fled. Again, he fled the first time into the woods to avoid the Nazis or the Polish agents, whoever it was. And then he fled the second time, and he ripped off his shoulder badges and stuff. So he was there like at the formation of Israel kind of thing. Yeah. And it was always great talking with him because he never would have supported the way Israel, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I guess they didn't know back then, the idea of like, the suffering of Palestinians, all that, this would not be, like in my family, when they said never again, they meant never again for anybody.
Yeah.
So it's a hard thing, but it does also kind of illustrate at the very formation of it, how, there were innocent players too, and people, like they say, you're in a shipwreck, you cling for a floating piece of wood, that kind of thing, but what's become of it. It's crazy how governments, politicians take these serious things in life and then, capitalize on it, like the way they're doing with the coronavirus right now, coronavirus capitalism, like, Bill, what's his name? Who's the Amazon guy again? Bezos, just record profits, $35 billion in the past 3 months, first trillionaire. Yeah.
He's already making, I forget what his like daily income is, but it's like his daily income is like a yearly salary for most.
Yeah, he makes something like 2,000 something a minute or some kind of crazy kind of thing. Like, while people are, like, the majority of the world's literally, I love all the stuff that you brought that stuff in there. It touched so many. I asked you that. Well, what was the sign? This should be something. What was the sign at the beginning when they enter the cave? And was it a military thing? So
the sign at the when they were in the mountains.
Yeah.
And they went to cave. Okay, so that sign was it was like a position première batterie or something like that. It was a sign for the First World War. When those caves, which are natural caves, were used as like munitions battery. And also soldiers were like just basically bunkered down in there in those caves. And I also learned when I was there, because it's just, it's beautiful now. You would never think that anything horrible happened there. But I later on saw photographs of that same mountain, and it was completely bare of trees, covered in the scars of bombs that were dropped there. And apparently like over 1 million people died on those hills. And so yeah.
Incredible, eh?
Yeah, and then you're up there and you're like, the world is such a peaceful, beautiful place. And it's like, but there's memories and reminders of the things that we do, like human beings just doing senseless stuff. I find it like so and unbelievable, the horrible things that we do to each other. And then at the same time, like it gives me like, it's interesting what you're talking about with you brought up the Russian camps and Siberia and things like that, because I feel like in Canada, like a lot of people just don't know what it is to like live in a system where you have no experience of what it is to trust your government. Like most Canadians grow up, and even though we get disillusioned later with like, learning a little bit more about the history of Canada, for the most part, people feel like we can trust our government to not totally screw us over. And I feel like that's getting more fragile lately. People are like less trusting and more conspiratorial believing. But you know, people who lived in Russia and Hungary and Poland and Romania, all these countries, like they have no reason to think that a government should be trusted. And I feel like I have so much more understanding now of why things kind of get as bad as they get, because you have to trust your government for anything to work. And there's so much corruption in these places because, I mean, I was actually talking to someone the other day who grew up in Sicily, and they were talking about the mob and how that's still a way of life there. And you know, people just walking around openly, just like taking payments for, I don't know what they do, stuff. But they're like, yeah, you know, most people, you know, they grew up, you know, just believing that the government is just a bureaucracy that's there to screw them over and do them no good and is useless to help them. And you know, you go down to your local guy and he'll do something for you. You can talk to him and he'll do something for you, right? And I was like, yeah, this is what's wrong. This is what's wrong. This is what Canadians like can't understand until you go there and you talk to people about their experiences, what it is to like have no trust in your government. And when I came back, because I like by no means am I like a, you know, patriot or anything like that, but when I came back, I had a much deeper appreciation for that. And also it took me years to kind of get over a feeling of resentment towards like a lot of people that I knew, you know, who are maybe a little bit more militant, like anti-government activist kind of people. And I would try to like bring up like, well, maybe we should be grateful for some things that we have here. And they'd be like, rah! Like really mad at me for bringing up like things could be worse, you know? And like, yeah. I get it now, but after seeing some stuff, I was like, I am grateful for that.
We have like, we don't have a mafia, maybe control our government here. We have definitely corporate interests that you know, we have so many terrible things here. And of course we export a lot of our misery. I mean, you know, immigrant populations here, Native population here, First Nations, of course they have experience. But the thing is like Chomsky always says, when you Noam Chomsky, when in other countries, they don't ask, what can I do? What can I do? They're doing, they organize, they you know, and there they have governments that are completely unresponsive to their needs and wishes. They don't have people there that are malleable in any way. It's just, you know, it's a terrible situation. And of course we exacerbated, you know, the West, you know, in so many of these places. So here we can easily criticize our government. We can point fingers, terrible stuff, pollution, war, all that. But we live in a society where we actually do have power, where if just even 3% of us would go and like, if the population would go and like do something, it would transform. Right? It's incredible. Yeah. And we have the freedom to do it here. Although of course there are awful consequences sometimes with the police, and it depends what's happening. But the point is that we have the power here to change things. If we were more, you know, if I mean they you know, we are deliberately kind of all broken apart. We're concerned with consuming things and shopping and money, all these different things, you know. But and you know, we're victims of propaganda too. No? But we are so lucky here that we and there are people in our government, maybe not the majority, but who would be maybe responsive, especially if we gave them pressure, even if it was just to save their own skins, even if it was just to save their own job. And we have right of assembly. We have all these things. We have the freedom to make Archie come. We have the freedom to write stuff and write, you know, draw horrible, crazy things, you know. And so it's really wild. And things like taxes, like you know, like our taxes are supposed to be like, we can really, if we wanted to, we can kind of control, you know, like that tax money is supposed to come back to us, not just the military or. But we don't. We're there's a lot of social conditioning. But yeah, we're so lucky. We're so damn lucky. And if I just hope that in the days that come, we can seize these opportunities, because we're very privileged to have it, while other places like you're describing don't have that kind of. Why should they trust their government? You know, it's completely, you know, it's a danger, you know? Yeah. One of the notes I made about, for your book, I wrote, it felt very relevant to today, like with Corona and stuff. in the sense that life cannot go on as normal while people are suffering. It's a different kind of suffering, and it has been this way. This is just a rough note. I should have probably like read it first, but it's a different kind of suffering, and has been this way throughout centuries. But the virus gives people a taste of what it's like to not have life go on as normal when there's terrible suffering. So I found in your book, Langosh and Yeva, they're not blind or insensitive to what's going around them, whether it's because his own life experience or because they're artists or because they're just, you know, kind of sensitive, caring people, or, but they are directly making the point that while life is beautiful and there's trees and travel and coffee and friendship, when there's suffering right outside your window, it's hard to just, you know, pretend it's not happening, you know. And so I thought that was very powerful. And right now, I think even if people are comfortable, those who are privileged, those who are comfortable, there's no way that it's not eating underneath their skin. Just the fact that even if they can't get the products they want to get at the grocery store, the fact, that they're vulnerable too, they can get sick as well. Seeing major politicians and celebrities also getting sick, like Boris Johnson or whoever, Tom Hanks or whoever. You know, the fact that they know that there's people in the hospital, they know that there's more trucks outside the hospitals, and it's kind of shaking everything, you know.
It's shaking everything up, and it because now I feel like, wow, I've lived through two really historic events in terms of the migrant crisis and now this virus crisis thing. And it made me think a lot about how, like, stories from like my family, like my grandmother lived through the Nazi occupation of Holland, and she was lucky to, because her mother was Jewish actually, but that fact was hidden or obscured. And then she talks about like what that was like on a daily basis, just like constant harassment and, you know, soldiers from a foreign army breaking into your apartment just to steal things and mess with you all the time. But there was still a solidarity amongst the neighbors to try to do what they could to help each other out and get through it. And at the end of the war, the people who were working with the Nazis were punished so hard by the you know, the regular citizens. And she was describing it, and she was just like, you know, after all of that, the neighbors that we knew were collaborating were punished by us, you know. And it was like, yeah, you have to think about society at large and like how your actions are impacting those around you. You can't be selfish, because it'll come back to you at some point. You know, you might be high on the hog for a while, but if you're inconsiderate to the needs of the people around you, you will suffer for that later.
Mm-hmm. I wonder if Jeff Bezos will have his come up. I don't see it happening, but yeah. I guess he's too hot, you know. But yeah, I mean, I really felt it, like there was a real sense of social responsibility in your book, and compassion was definitely a strong kind of theme in the book, like feeling compassion. And I'm kind of honored to be kind of like launching at the same time as you, because I feel like in my book, although it's so different, that's kind of the message that's kind of there too, you know? And,
I think so too. I think it made sense that we were going to be signing together.
Two computer-free,
we're soul connected, you know?
Okay. Such a good, I really feel like it was a good interview. I hope that this is entertaining for whoever's watching.
Yeah, me too. I thought it was great.
You want to try to do like a final
format? We should just do this amongst all of the artists.
You want to do like a final plug for the?
Yeah, sure, I will. So this is Howard Chackowicz, Nothing to See Here, published by Conundrum Press. So you can order that at conundrumpress.com or your local bookstore.
Or anywhere.
Or anywhere. Yeah, get it anywhere. But nice if you can support your local bookstore too.
Yes.
And try to romp through the twisted mind of Howard Chackowicz.
Thank you so much.
Sure many will enjoy.
Here is Veronica Post's fantastic book, Langosh and Peppi, Fugitive Days, from Conundrum Press, the wonderful Andy Brown.
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful story, a real tale. What I really wished was that I could have been on a train reading this. If I would have been on a train, I would have been in heaven, or traveling, but especially on a train. you really captured the feeling of travel and being in another place and being like excited or open to the air and the sights and the buildings and the people, that kind of thing. Then also uncovering some of the stuff underneath that, you know, that the humanity that exists everywhere, and great messages about people and compassion and about remembering, you know, immigrants and refugees and people. That's one planet, and there's people all over. We're all supposed to take care of each other, and also individual suffering and trials, and you know, life can be very difficult, and it's just a it's very powerful. Just there's really everyone really kind of has stuff to on their shoulders in this book, and you did it with class and style and meaning, and I think people are going to walk away from this and they're going to be thinking, and I can't think of a better thing for a book or a piece of art to do is to get people to think and not feel threatened, you know, and just want to run away from it, but actually be moved. So success.
Same goes with your book as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
For people who are trying to keep the spirit of TCAF alive and to help us promote our books, I don't know if Philippe Leblanc asked you the same thing, but he said, what would you like to tell people?
Yeah.
You know, how could people support you in this time? Did he ask you that question also?
He did, yeah.
And I you know, just said, if you can, like, you know, sure, help any artist you can. Like, we're talking about comics, I guess. So yeah, order our books, buy prints, do whatever you can, you know, support.
Yeah, absolutely. Like keep, even just, you know, buy the books is great. Even if you just don't have the money to buy the book right now or whatever, just finding us out there and saying that you like it or that you're interested in it. It always perks me up when people take the time to write me a little note on Facebook or Instagram, just being like, this is really cool. So even if you're like, you know, and having a rough time right now because of everything, just reaching out with that is great.
Yeah, I can't. What can mean more to an artist than just having someone reach out, right? It's the greatest thing, right?
So,
do you have any like website or blog site or anything that you want to plug?
Well, I don't have my own website, but I probably should. That's something I could do during this time. No, I just have a Facebook page. So if you look up Veronica L Post, you'll find that. Or Langosh and Peppi, I think also it comes up. And then my Instagram is Langosh and Peppi.
There you go.
Yeah.
I'm going to work on a blog and work on a web page. Yes, folks, you can get me on Facebook, and I have a limited web presence. When Philippe Leblanc when we did this, I think at TCAF like 2 years ago, so everyone else knows on the panel, they're showing their comics pages. I have some stuff online. It's not like I have nothing, but he ended up using like a poster from Drawn and Quarterly when I was doing my class. I was like, that's all you're able to find online? He's like, oh, I didn't really have much. There wasn't really much to find. I was like,
maybe Howie, a website would be the best thing for you, because then you could just put all your images up there, and you don't have to see anything anyone else says. Yeah,
a website to sell stuff also during this time. I thought, I have prints, and I thought a blog to, you know, just a blah blah blog, whatever. You know.
Yeah, blah blah blog.
That's the name.
Blah blah blah's blog.
Blah blah blog. What a great conversation. So great to also get to talk to you a bit too. We always just talk a little bit and stuff. We never actually, you know,
good to have, you know, like a virtual face-to-face.
Yeah. Well, I wish you health and happiness, and
you too.
Congratulations for the book, for both of us. health and well-being to everybody and all that, and just let's all come through this. And I'm just hoping next year we will be in TCAF together. Next year at TCAF. Yeah,
next year at TCAF, and you know, see you before then, maybe even. We'll see.
Yes, I hope so.
Maybe virtually at least.
And thanks so much for setting this up. And thanks to Conundrum Press also.
Yeah, thanks to Conundrum, thanks to TCAF and everyone out there.
Perfect.
Bye, Howie.
Bye. So you're going to hang up. Are you going to still be there, or are you going to actually disappear?
I'm going to stop recording now.